So according to your article, you what is it? So when you first learned you had been accepted to RSJ, Ryerson School of Journalism, you to quote, I remember the moment exactly, 9:40 a.m. on Friday, January 20th, 2017, in room 317 of Cardinal Center Catholic High School. I was in my
Cardinal
politics
Carter.
class, Cardinal Carter, yes. I
Yes.
was in my politics class checking email on my cell phone shortly before the class bell rang. The news filled me with pride. So I wonder if you still feel the same amount of pride having been graduated from the same school, what, 4 or 5 years later?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question to answer because as much as I was like super dedicated to getting into art and journalism, and it showed because I was always like, to get in, you need to have at least 77 to 80 average, but typically the average GPA, average to get in, like because with averages sometimes they're higher or lower than the set one.
Mhm.
It was I think 87 in my year, so you had to have
Wow.
pretty good grades, and then you also had to submit a resume, portfolio, and an essay. So it wasn't like just something where you could just like submit the grades and be fine. You really had to put an effort.
So are you a Toronto native? Like, were you born and raised in the city?
I'm from the suburbs of Toronto.
Gotcha. So, when was the moment upon admission, upon actually attending classes, that you noticed that something was up, something was wrong here? This is not what I've
It
signed up
was
for.
Well, the first real moment was the orientation day, which I document in the piece. It was in late August. I remember getting off the subway that day and heading to the architecture building, which is one of the main buildings on campus. And we were in a big room. There was about 130 people, I think,
Mhm.
give or take a few. And I just remember sitting down and being all excited to hear like the chair welcome us, and then the a professor walked to the front of the classroom and greeted us. She's like, "Welcome, you're the class of 2021." And then she just jumped in, being like, "Oh, you journalists nowadays, Trump is always like, oh, you're the fake news media. You're stupid." And she was kind of making fun of Trump a little when she was going on her rant.
Mhm.
And being a more conservative minded person, support Trump's policies. Some of his policies I don't agree with.
Mhm.
And I just remember thinking in my head, like, okay, this is our first lecture, and you're already jumping in, bashing Trump and making fun of him. Like, what if there's students here who, might agree with some of Trump's ideas or might come from more conservative backgrounds? Like, how do you respond? Like, it's kind of like making that student inside feel very like, ugh.
Yeah, I can understand that. I know that. I mean, I've studied in Canada, probably in the same time period as you. I'm originally from Vietnam. The school I was studied in and graduated from is Trent University, which is not too far from Ryerson. Ryerson was actually my first choice, um, and I wanted to do an English program, and so tell me about your views on the former Republican president of the United States. I know you haven't elaborated on that on your piece, but I like to hear those.
So, out of when it came to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I would choose Donald Trump any day compared to her. I think I like his appeal, but he's anti establishment. And I
Mhm.
believe in some of his opinions regarding the economy, immigration, healthcare. I'm a pretty conservative minded person.
Mhm.
So I think that he had the most conservative policies, and his whole message of making America great again after 8 years of disastrous policies from the Obama administration,
Mhm.
I found them rather appealing. In the 2020 election, I will admit that I would continue to support Trump. And we saw that where more people did end up voting for Trump, even though he lost to Joe Biden.
Mhm.
I disapprove of how he continued to insist that the election was rigged and that there was voter fraud when that wasn't the case. I think it's just him being his like egotistical personality. that he was very, oh, like, I don't like losing, but sometimes you have to be gracious when you lose and realize that I could have done things differently.
Right. So, yeah. So journalism, would you say that the diversity and inclusion program that they are undertaking at Ryerson, I think they're still doing it, you know. How would you say that they are hindering the journalistic process?
They're creating these people. Well, I think that the Ryerson School of Journalism is hindering the industry with this diversity inclusion agenda by creating less open-minded people. They're closing off people to exploring ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's making people who are, maybe conservative, libertarian, or even just someone who's just like has beliefs all over, feel that they don't belong in the program,
Mm-hmm.
or that if they stay in the program, they have to keep their mouth shut or risk being ostracized. And that's totally against what a university should be about. We should be committed to having all students feel free to speak their minds and share their opinions without fear of reprisal.